This conference will now be recorded.
All right. So today's topic is functions, and we're just getting started with it. So, what are functions, or what is a function, and what does it do? So, if I had to write, it's basically a block of code that you can use and reuse. So, I'm going to put reuse under quotes multiple times in the same program. That's what it means. And what I want to stress is reusability here. So let's say you wrote even if it's a two-line of code, it doesn't matter. You wrote a piece of code, and down the line or down your programming or in your package, you feel that you're reusing that code again and again. Then what you can do is you can put it under a function block and then call that function instead of writing the whole code again and again. So that is what is meant by reusability. So let's just take a basic example of addition of two numbers. So what do you need for two numbers? You need two variables, x and y, and values to it, and then you do basically, well, some people might say it's a lengthy way, but just for the heck of it, let's use it like this, and then print off result. That's all you need, right? Now imagine if you were doing it for 2 comma 3, then you are doing it like this. Then you want to do again a sum of another two different numbers, 5, 7, 10, 11, even for float digits, 14 and a half and 15 and a half. So you're writing these three lines of code again and again and again and again and every time. What if you were able to condense this code into one line or maybe into a couple lines and then just keep calling it in a single line? So that is what is the concept of function. So basically, if you're running into the same logic, the logic is always same, right? You're basically getting two numbers, you're adding them, and you're printing the sum. So the logic is always the same. Only thing that changes is your numbers. So those kind of places is where you can combine this code using a function. So again, it's all about reusability. Wherever you see a need of reusability of code in a better way, we always use functions. So we've already seen some functions like inbuilt functions, you can say like print, float, type to check the type, and what else, int, etc., etc. So these are all predefined systems, predefined functions, which basically means, or in other words, inbuilt functions, which are provided by Python. So there are other types of functions which are like user defined. That's what we're going to deal with. But before I go there, let me give some more notes stuff. So how many types of functions are there? I haven't come across any place in internet or anything which basically defines it like this. So let me go ahead and write it. So defined by py. Then user defined functions defined by programmer. Then there are called as something called as lambda functions. So some people who have some knowledge would have heard about it. Lambda functions are very, very useful when you have to, let's say, condense a huge code into one line or a couple of lines. And they're very popular also for the same reason, for interviews, as well as the other reason why they're popular is because they're very efficient, uh, especially when you write big chunks of code. Can you
I
guys
think it
keep
helps
on
in
mute? Anybody?
orchestration in
Haravi? Sorry, what is the question? No, no, go ahead.
no, I think it helps in automation. I think
Yeah,
it helps in automation a lot.
you're right. Absolutely. So yeah, that is just one use case. Lambda functions can be used everywhere. Automation, as you're right, is one example. But basically, wherever we have big code, right, and we want to just condense it into few lines, that's where Lambda functions are generally used. And like I said, they're very, very efficient. So if you are able to write a Lambda function, if you're good with it, then obviously, of course, write it almost all the time. Um, then there's something called as magic methods or functions. So we'll talk about methods and how different they are, but basically they're the same thing as functions. You can consider that as of now. These are even called Dundle methods, or they're all synonyms, or even super. I think it's super, right? Yeah, super methods. So these we'll discuss in detail in OOPS, but just for the sake of definition, I'm putting it here. So these are the broad categories of function types in Python, and you will see most of the time something like this. So this is nothing but two underscores followed before and followed by the name of the function. So these are nothing but your magic functions or your Dundle methods, or you can say your inbuilt functions as well. So just to give you a very basic idea, whenever you start writing a code in Python, right? Internally, it basically internally what is called is basically this. If I think it is if name, yep, if some name equal to main. So as you remember, I told you, right? It is a lot following C, and in C, you have this main function concept. You have to, that is your first entry point. It's the same thing in Python, it's just that you don't see it. So this is how your Python code actually starts the first time. And of course, you won't understand this much right now because you haven't seen Dundle method and all those stuff. But I'm just giving you an idea. These are your super methods or Dundle methods. So every Python starts with this as the first line. It basically matches that you are calling main function, and I'm just writing pass for the heck of it. But you're going to, but they write the exact code, or they basically convert your code there. So we will explore these Dundle methods and super methods later when we do OOPS concept. That's where you will understand better. So let's go ahead with user-defined functions. That's our main topic,
The
and
row,
that's our thing in detail.
the row number 17, it does it look like the public static void main, like similar to that?
Yeah, exactly. Static void main in C, right? It's pretty much it's pretty much calling the same function actually. So this is so whenever you start writing a program, right? So let's say you first line, whatever you write, even if you're initializing a variable x equal to 5 or whatever, and whenever you start running this using this green arrow, this the first line gets converted to this internally. It calls the main function, and if you are any bit familiar with OOPS, then basically it overrides or overloads the main function, and then goes ahead with your function sorry, with your program, whatever you're written on it, or your Python file. But that's the same thing, yeah.
Okay.
We'll talk about this a lot in detail when we go to OOPS concepts, but this is just for, because of I'm just telling you what are the main types of functions. I'm putting it here. So built-in functions we've already seen, right? I'm not gonna talk much about it. Let's talk about user-defined functions, which are defined by programmer or by us, basically. So there is going to be a statement that I'm going to write here. Functions are called as first class objects. Does anybody understand what this means? Has anybody heard of this before?
No, Ankit.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is sometimes asked in interviews as well. What do you mean by first class objects? So first class objects is basically nothing but functions, and we'll see in a minute. It's more of an OOPS concept, but I'll show you what it basically means in today's class itself. Uh, so let's go ahead and just to give you a brief, right? Everything in Python is an object. Simple example, let me take function underscore intro.py. So a very, very simple thing. I'm not even doing much here. Print type of 5, let's say. So you guys all know, right? This is very easy now. The output would be class of integer. So what is this? Class int means what? It is basically telling you, well, so far we interpret is that it's an integer. But look at this class. So OOPS, the main concept is class. OOPS is built on classes and objects. Of course, we'll discuss a lot in detail, but just for now, just follow along. So if you look at this, this is basically giving you, so 5 is nothing but an integer type, right? But look at it carefully. It's saying class int. So even integer is an object kind of a thing because it says class int, and an object is always related to class. So if you return, even if you say 5.8, if you do that, see it says class float. If you do, sorry guys, if you do this, what's wrong? See, class string. So always remember this, guys. In Python, everything is a function. Sorry, is an object. Everything in Python is an object. Even this print function, if you look at it, I don't know if type works on print function. Let's see. I doubt actually. That is also an object of none type. See, even your print function, the function that we use almost every day. So that is also, it says none type. We'll talk about that later, but concentrate on the part where it says class. Even the type function, it's also an object. So like I said, everything in Python is an object. One second. Let me go back here. So that's what this statement means. This is a very important statement, guys. Never forget that. So now what I mean is function itself, the function that we're calling, right? We just saw the print function or any function itself is considered as an object. Because what did we see when we did the print? We are saying class none type. Or forget about that. We're looking at strings and it says class string type. So the type function itself is a considered as an object in that case. So like I said, everything in Python is considered an object because the Python code completely, the interpreter code is written in using apps. Sorry, oops. What am I saying? So that's the reason we see everything as object. So we'll come back to it. I'll show you a bit more on this a little bit in detail, but let's just go with some more basic stuff. So the very first thing you need to know in Python is how do you define functions? I'm sure most of you would know this. So we use a keyword called def. It stands for define. And then we use any function name you want. Okay.
Hi, Ankit.
The most important. Hi, Sriram. Yep. So we've just started.
Okay,
We'll talk about
okay. Due
functions.
to office work,
It's okay, it's okay. No worries. So this is the syntax. How do we define functions? Using the keyword as def, which stands for define, and then the function name. I think I told you guys before, right? So my way of saying this is basically this could be anything. The greater than and less than equal to sign. But the most important syntax is this, followed by a colon. So followed by a colon means we have some lines of code here. So this is your, in general, like the very basic syntax of defining a function. Now you can take the syntax and you can define, you can even extend it. So something like this. So it can have param1, param2, param3, and so on up till param n. Doesn't matter how many parameters you want. So we'll talk about what params are and what they are, but this is just more like a syntax that I'm doing right now. And parameters are optional. Optional meaning you may or may not give it. So that's how we saw it here, right? There were no parameters. And then there is another optional thing which is called return statement. You saw I did not give it here. So we'll talk about each and everything in detail, but just now for syntax purpose, just try to follow along. So this is how you define a function. And like we discussed earlier, the function is used to execute the same piece of code again and again, just for the brevity and for reusability. That is the most important thing. So there could be functions which do not need parameters. We'll see in a minute, like if you want to just display a name or something, then you don't really need to pass it. And then there are some functions where you would need one, two, or even more than that parameters. So let's go ahead and quickly explore using a real example. So like I was saying, I'm going to take a very simple example, guys. Addition of two numbers. Let's say you want to write a program for that. It's very simple, right? X equal to 4, y is equal to, let's say, 3. Sum, okay. We do not use sum because sum is an inbuilt keyword in Python. So either you give sum x or something like that, x plus y, and then print sum x, correct? This is your usual program, and you get no wonder 7. Now, what I can do is instead I can create a function. So remember, I said def or define is the keyword for it. Now I say add to numbers. So there's a reason why I wrote this like this. Does anybody know why am I writing it like this? So is
I
this a
guess it's a
syntax?
standard practice to use camel words.
Exactly. You're 100% correct, and you said it right.
But
So
it's not a
nobody's going
camel
to,
one, no, Ankit.
well, camel, you can call it camel, you can say anything, but the point is that this is not really a syntax. What it means is this is the basic idea is this is something which is agreed upon in the developer community. So either you can do this or you can do this. Both are correct. The most important point is you should always start with a small letter. Always remember that. So in that case, it's not camel. But your any new word or any following word should always start with a capital letter. Again, this is not a syntax, like by all means this works. It is not like it's not going to work, but remember this because this is the best practices, like Sunil said. So that's your way of defining. Again, colons, of course, the same logic, we have to give a space. VS Code automatically takes care of that for me, so I don't have to worry about it. Now I'm going to use sum x equal to x plus y. What happened? Plus y. Okay, we'll see a lot many variations of this, but for now, just do this print sum x. Actually, I'm not going to use sum x. Let me use result. We already used sum x there. Now, first of all, do you guys think this code will work? I'm just going to put this into comment.
So, Ankit, I
Why we
guess
need to?
while defining the function, like as you mentioned, add two numbers in the bracket, there maybe we have to define at least two values so that the function would accept two values.
You're saying here parameters?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay,
No.
that's a step 1.5, but I was expecting something before that. But you're right, it won't work because we don't have x and y here. My point was, let's say we run it actually. Okay, let me first do that. He's right. It won't work without passing x and y. So this is what Sunil was saying. But my point is that this will still not work. See, even though we had a print statement, but it did not work. So this is one more important thing that you have
We
to
need
remember,
to
guys.
call the
We
function,
need to
no?
call
We
it.
need to
Yeah.
call that
Exactly. So what we are doing here is we are just giving
declaration.
the
Yeah,
function declaration.
definition.
Declaration. This doesn't mean that this will execute by its own. This is a very important concept, guys. Whoever is new to functions, please remember this. Like I just showed you, right? Nothing was printed. So, and how do you call a function? Or basically, until you don't call a function, until then, this piece of code or any piece of code, you can write 10 lines of code here. It doesn't matter. 1,000 lines of code also you can write here. It won't matter. Because until you call, this code doesn't even get loaded to the memory. So I'll come back to that in a minute. But what I'm saying is, until you do this, it won't work. 4 comma 3 we used earlier, right? So we know it is 7. Let's run it now. You see, print is working now. So how is this code working? What happens here is when the interpreter comes here, right? It is always top to down and left to right. It looks the keyword define. So it knows I am actually defining a function. It doesn't do anything here, nothing. It just knows that I'm defining a function. It completely skips this code, the whole function code. Then so you can have anything here as well. I don't care. But we're just talking about this function right now. When it sees this, what is this? It knows you're trying, and along with these parentheses and some maybe 4 and 3 is there and may not be there, like we discussed already. But the moment it sees this, it knows it's a call to a function. That is when it loads this into memory and start running it. So this is how the interpreter would work. Always remember this, guys, about functions. You might think that you're already putting this in the memory and you're already doing it. No. The moment it sees def keyword, it basically skips the code. It goes directly to the function call. We'll talk about it later why it does that. But for now, just try to understand the concept. So the moment it sees this, it knows it's a call to a function. Then is when it is going to look for that particular function name. It will match it, and then of course it will do the rest of the thing. And if everything works, then it is going to execute the function code, just like we saw right now. So going by that logic, you guys can ask me one question. Do you think instead of putting the function call here, if I do a function call here, would it work? Anybody take a guess?
Yeah, it should work.
It
Okay,
shouldn't, I guess.
one person says it should, one says it shouldn't. Let's see. It won't. Look at the error.
Yeah,
Add two
top to
numbers is
bottom you
not
have to release.
defined.
Yeah,
So
top to
this is the
bottom.
confusing part.
Confusing
Basically,
the row
in a
number 13,
nutshell,
14, 15. Sorry, the row number 13, 14, 15, it's like a transformation, and the row number 17, sorry, 18 is action, correct?
this is, sorry, your voice was breaking a little. This is what you said?
It is the 18, row number 18 is a kind of action, and the row number 13, 14, 15, it's like a transformation. So whenever we call action, the transformations will work.
Correct. Correct. That is a beautiful way of explaining it. Perfect, Anand. But I'm going to use a little more easy way. So basically, what we are saying is, why it didn't copy? Look at this error itself. If you do the add number is not defined. So declaration or definition is the same thing. What it's basically trying to say is you're trying to call somebody who doesn't exist. So basically you're trying to call somebody with a name who's not even born in the world. So that is not going to work. So always remember this, guys. Function calls are always after the declaration of the function or the definition of the function. It cannot exist before. So, sorry, let me put this in comment. So sometimes people ask you this question also because, like I was showing you, right? Once this happens, that's when this whole piece of code executes. That's fine, but you still have to declare it before. That's why it does look at this line. It just doesn't look at this line. So when it looks at def, it knows that I'm declaring a function with this name and whatever parameters you're giving. Sometimes there could be parameters, sometimes there could not be parameters. So that is the whole
This,
idea of a
Ankit,
function.
whenever it will saw that def keyword, it will store that this is the function name, and it will be stored in the memory. Like,
So again, that is the same concept that we have to talk about memory a little later, but your question is very
no,
good.
not memory.
So,
Means,
mhm,
is it means if we declare calling the function above the declaration, it is not aware of that add two numbers, and when we
exactly,
are declaring, yeah,
exactly. It doesn't even know what this add
it is
two
storing
numbers means.
somewhere that is declared.
Correct, correct. And that's not a compiler-based language, right? Because if it was a compiler-based language, it would still have a chance that you have something in below or something like that. But even then, it would see for what is the definition for it, and you don't have it defined. So that's why, like you said, exactly. So the point is, so far we've learned function declaration and function call. Now let's see the importance of it. Like I told you guys, reusability, reusability, reusability. Always remember that. So now I did this code right to getting 7. Now what if I have to do this 5 and 8? I have to write this again, right? Now let's say if I want to print 14.5 and 8.9. I'm just making it hypothetically. You have to keep writing this 4 lines of code again and again, right? Let's see if you run it. See? But now see the magic. All I can do is this, and what was our second example? 5, 8. What was our example here? 14.5 and 8.9. Let's see. See, you're getting the exact same output, but just look at the brevity and the niceness. You're basically writing the same code once, but you're calling it multiple times. So the point is the way you call the function, whether whatever parameters you want to give, whether integer type, whether float type, it will dynamically convert it. See, we did not define what is x and y, right? Even in the definition, we never said it will load, it's only going to take x and sorry, integer values. Here, if you see, it is also taking float values. This is what is meant by dynamically typed language. So Python is one of that language. And just see, we had to get rid of all this. We can get rid of all this code just by one simple line. So that is what is meant by reusability. You are reusing this code here, 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 and even 100 times if you go down in this program. So we'll go slow today, guys. Did you guys understand this, or do you guys have any questions so far?
Okay, in the row number 13, that the way argument can be always acceptable. I mean, in x and y, how many argument we can give?
Yes, we have to talk about it. It's there's a different concept completely on it, but I'll come to it.
Okay.
But so far, whatever I've explained, did you guys understand this completely? Is there anybody who did not understand it?
Are there any concept of global versus local functions?
Yeah, of course. You're talking day 3. We are still at day 1 on. We'll talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah. So with functions, just try to follow along with what I'm telling you right now, and then we'll talk about everything in detail. But so I'm guessing the answer is no. Everybody understood it. So I'm going to move ahead. The reason I'm asking and stressing is because this is the basic idea of function, and you have to understand this, how a function call works, what is a function definition. Otherwise, you're gonna kind of miss the whole point. So
In short, little bit. So we have to just define the function, right? In between.
not in between. So we always start with the definition. So I don't know if you joined earlier, Fahim, but I was showing if you put this call here, like you see this, it is going to give you an error. You cannot call a function before it is defined. So the definition of the function has to be before the actual function call.
It has to be the first step, right?
Exactly, it has to be the first step. And we saw if there's no function call, this code never even gets executed, even though this comes before the function call. Because I was explaining, when Python sees the def keyword, it knows it is going to be a function, so it just keeps it in its local memory and it skips the rest part. It knows I will have to come back to it based on the function call. And when it looks at the function call, that's when this guy goes here, and that's when this code is executed. Just remember that piece also. These are the two important concepts that we have discussed so far in functions. And of course, that is the reason, that's why it doesn't, because it doesn't work here. That's why you were able to use the same function with float and same function with integer value. Because the reason, and that is also one of the reasons why it did not load this into the memory, because you don't know what are your x and y. It's a dynamically typed language. So you can provide integers, you can provide float, whatever you want to provide. So that's why there is no point of running this code because you don't even know what kind of parameters you're going to pass. So it waits for the actual function call for that. All right, is that clear?
Yeah, clear.
Perfect. So now we saw a function call
Sorry,
with two parameters.
With
No,
this
no,
example,
sorry.
can you tell me why we are calling this Python is object-oriented programming language?
So like I said
Everything is
before,
object.
like I said before, everything in Python is an object. So we saw, remember I showed you, I don't think so I have that code. I showed you here. So even the type of print, everything was returning a class of something. And class is a object-oriented concept. So basically class int means it's returning an object of type int. You would never see object in Python. Everything is class. So class space int means it actually means it's an object of type class. That's what it means. So everything in Python is an object. So remember, I even showed you print type of 5 here. So even this is
Int.
object of class int.
Okay.
See? So even basic, this is a very basic thing of any language, right? You're defining an integer. That itself is basically an object of a class type int. So everything in Python is an object. So of course, functions are no exception to that. Like we saw with the print function also, right? It showed class none type. So that is the
Right.
idea. That's why we call everything in Python as an object. And Python is completely built using object-oriented programming.
Thank you.
All right. No worries. So far we are seeing that we are calling the add to numbers with 2 parameters, right? We can have a function without any parameters. We can have a function with a lot of parameters. So now what I'm going to say is, so basically we can have a different type of parameters, and we'll see one by one what are the parameters. What are the different sort of parameters? Sorry, my boss is pinging me, so I was just getting distracted a bit. Just give me 1 second, guys. Okay, so now just follow along the same code. Okay, I'm gonna remove this. You guys understood the idea. Let's say I gave it like this. Do you think this will work? Y is equal to 3. If it will work, then
It
how?
should.
If it will not. Okay.
Yeah,
Means
I
it
guess it.
should be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
I'm
default
Yeah,
saying
it
it
should
should
work.
x
work,
is 2.
but if you don't define any value, it will be treated as 2 and 3.
Okay.
So Ankit, is it like that default value we are giving in case it is not given?
Right. But that is the whole point, what I was gonna say, Tushar. So Sunil was right. It is working syntactically. It is going perfectly, and it is giving us the output also, but it's not giving 5. We'll talk about it in a minute. But my point is, this is not a good idea to do. There's a reason we are so if you look at this, we are actually taking away the dynamic typal language of Python concept, because here you are defining them to be always taking integer values. What is the point, right? When Python will automatically do it for us. So the simple logic or simple point I'm trying to make is this is never a good idea. We'll see how we want to do it in just a minute. Those are called default line arguments. But there is a way to do it. But the point here was, so far, whatever we have seen, this is not a good idea to get the same result as this. Always use this because you're basically missing on this part. You're kind of changing the behavior. All right. So now let's say you've seen me use a function with 2 variables. But remember, when I was explaining it to you in the function, there is a possibility, like I said, parameters are optional. These are nothing but parameters. So for parameters is another word is arguments. What I'm saying is, what it means is the values that you're actually passing to these variables. This is in terminology called parameters or arguments, which are within this brackets, and they get passed to these variables. We'll talk a lot about in detail, but just for the example sake, I'm just telling you right now. So now function with without any parameters, can we do something like this? Why not? So let me just put a simple, very simple example. Print Ankit. All I'm saying is that I want to print my name on the display. And like we saw again, just simple call it like this. There you go. Where is 5 coming from? Let's put this also in the thing. So this is nothing but an example of a function without any parameters. This is the simplest form a function can have. We are doing nothing actually here. We're just writing a simple piece of code and we're just calling that function. Of course, you don't need this. You can remove this and still print Ankit would work. But this is just an example. We'll see more and more as we go further. Now, I do have one question for you guys. We saw this works like this, right? What will be my output now? Will it be error, or will it be Ankit, or will it be John?
Error.
No, still Ankit.
Okay, somebody says error, somebody says Ankit, nobody says Tushar.
That function is not expecting any argument, I think.
Okay,
But we are
so
still
Tushar himself is saying Tushar won't be there.
yeah, it should be error out.
Okay, let's see. And you're right. Because we are passing an argument here when it is not expecting any argument. So this is a very important concept also, guys. We'll see this like day in and day out, but just to bring it to you, always remember your function. So this is your function definition, right? Like we discussed here. This is your function call, and where is your function definition? This is your function declaration or definition. So when you're defining the function, that's when you have to tell what is the number of parameters if it is going to take or not. So you might think you're trying to override Ankit with John, but that is not going to work like this. Because when you're defining the function, that's when you have to tell whatever you want to print or whatever you want to use the parameter as. So all of you guys were right that it is going to be an error. So that was an example of basic this one. So this is so far what we have seen is we are not returning any data. Remember when I was talking, we were talking about an optional return statement as well. This is a very important concept again. So you can actually return values or return anything basically from a function call.
Ankit, one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the row number 31, can you define x in that function? Yeah, in 30x. Now, can you give another Tushar in the 37?
You're saying this?
Yes. So now we declare x. X will be taken with Ankit. Even if you give one argument in the function display name, so it will be still printing an Ankit only, right?
Correct, because we're not using x here. See, we're only, this is a blind statement asking to print Ankit. We are not using the x anywhere in this whole function. So you're right. See, this is another beauty of VS Code. I don't know if it's visible to you guys. Let me see if I can increase the font. No, right? So if you guys see closely, you see this color of X is very different than this def. It's faded. You guys see that too? I don't know if it's visible in the GoToMeeting or not.
Yeah, it's visible.
Yeah, so that is one thing in VS Code. That's why I like it. So this tells me, so it's not an error. It's faded. If it was an error, it would have that tilde below it or yellow sign or something like that. But all it's trying to tell me is that, hey, boss, you are defining a variable, but you're not actually using it. That's why it is faded. So look at the magic now. You saw it go from fade to dark blue. Did you guys look at it? Because now I am actually using it. See? Now again, I'm not using it, it's going to fade it. So that's why I like VS Code a lot. When you're actually coding, it will tell you a lot more things even before you have to run it. But anyways, that was just a VS Code tip. So you got the answer right, Anand?
Yes, Ankit, thank you.
Perfect. So,
Ankit?
Yes, sir. Tell me.
Ankit?
Yeah, Ankit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, Ankit.
Yeah, can you hear me, Sriram? I can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
In the declaration, it given as giving say declaration is stating that add to numbers, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Can we give from along with that like product or something else? I mean that we have to give only for one type, like
No,
to need to add two numbers.
You can do define. I'll use this in the next example. Don't worry. You can do 5, 6. So you can actually very well result equal to 5 into 6 and then print result. You can do anything. It's just one
It's
thing
not
that
like
you
that.
want
And
to do here. Okay, so what is your question? Sorry.
actually, my doubt. Actually, my doubt is that in the add to numbers, along with that, can we give that multiple or something?
Where? In this line?
Yes.
So I'm not sure if I follow you. So are you saying so what is the ask you're asking? What is the problem statement? You're saying instead of print result, we want to print the multiplication of these two numbers? Or you're saying
We can only we can only give only for one, means add to numbers only, or else we can't able to give along with the product or something else. Yeah, function declaration.
I don't know. Is anybody able to follow what his question is?
I think he's saying that can you define both
Typing is
methods in the function?
Can you define both methods in the function?
Yeah, so he's saying add two numbers, you can add. So he's saying after line number 15, can you give another variable, say multiplication, and do x into y?
Yes, why not?
Yeah, that's
what I
his
said.
question.
You can do result x into y also. It all depends whatever you want to do. So I'll put it in result 1 and then I'll do result 1. See, this is just the name of the variable, just like we do x equal to 5, right? X has no meaning. Except, I mean, you can give x, you can give y, you can give whatever you want. So it's the name of the function. It has to be meaningful. Like if you're, so first of all, Sriram, is that your question?
Yes, Sanket.
So your answer is yes, it is doable. Of course, it will return now the multiplication instead of addition. But the point is, when you're writing an actual code, right? Somebody else also is going to read your code. In fact, there are code reviews and whatnot in real time. So you have to make sure that you give the name of the function, which is very much in line with what you're actually trying to do. So even though this will work, but you should always make sure that the name of the function is telling you a bit about what you're doing. So yeah, it will. The answer is yes, it will work, but you may not want to do it like this. Got it? You can use x and y, whatever you want to do. You can even do x divided by y. Doesn't matter. That's up to you.
Earlier you mentioned function name has to be.
Yeah, Ankit, I have a doubt. So the same. Hey, hello.
Yeah, go ahead, Ravi. I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So my doubt is that continuation with that Sriram. Yeah, I hear. So this result is equal to x plus y. Like that, I want to give 10 statements. Okay, which one will print first? After that,
so depending on the
I'm telling
statement,
result x plus y. Next line return x into y, x divided by y. So when you print the result.
Okay. So you're saying.
Okay, which one will print it first? I want to, which and the.
This is
will
what
go
you're
from
asking,
top
right?
to bottom or?
Yes, it will go from top to bottom. So the final output should be this. It won't.
Yeah.
So again, this is, if you look at these two lines, what it really means is this. I am defining a variable as a is equal to 5 and b is equal to 10. Okay. So now I'm changing a is equal to 12. Simple. What do you think my value, if I print a, what will be my value? Should be the last one, right? 12, because 12 is overridden to 5.
Yeah.
Exactly the same thing here. We are not changing anything that point. Result is just a variable. In this line, it is doing an addition. You don't want to print it, that's fine. That's up to you. Then the next line, you're asking it to store multiplication. And you're printing that, so it's going to print the multiplication output. Now go ahead. Ask your question.
Okay, both it will print, right? Okay.
Not both. No.
It will not print both, right?
It will not. It will just print the last stored memory. See, again, go back to this example. Will it print 5? No, right? It will just print 12. Exactly. This is nothing. So
Yeah,
this
yeah,
has
yeah.
nothing to do with
No,
functions.
no.
This is a regular concept.
Okay, now,
Mhm. That's why I was
okay,
using
now
this.
if I give that, now we are doing a normal, right? So the same result, okay, same thing when you use that parameter kind of thing. So we give the result top, and again I want to after definition, I will give the what is it? I'll use that function down. Okay, like what you explained us, right? So
Mhm.
when I declare here, and when I pass the variables like x and y there itself, like pass by value, right? So at that time, which one will print? Because top one or under the downward it will print means like
So
uh,
I think I know what you're
it's like pass
confusing.
by value, pass by reference is there, right?
That's what I
So
knew.
that concept.
So hold on to that. You're talking about C++ concept. Your concepts are going to change a little bit here. So we'll talk about it in a minute. So just hold on for that question. We'll come to it. But once I'll explain you, you will know exactly the answer to your question.
So
Okay?
Ankit, earlier you mentioned about function name. You use two underscore followed by the function name, then end up with two underscore. When do we do that?
You're talking about this?
No. Before the add, there's like a underscore underscore.
Oh, okay. I know what you're talking. You're talking about the super methods. Correct. So that's a good question. You're talking about, did I mention it? So yeah, this one, right?
Yeah.
So these are basically reserved. These are reserved for inbuilt super functions or Dundle methods. What it means is, so again, this is a concept when we'll talk about OOPS, but I'll answer to your question. So you saw this, right? Underscore underscore main. So this is an inbuilt call. We never see this, right? On the output. So that's why Python community decided that any Dundle methods or super methods or magic methods, they're all the same thing. We are going to put this as a naming convention. Again, it won't fail if you went and changed this to this. It's also perfectly valid, but they just came up with this naming convention that any super method or any Dundle method will always start with first two underscores and then end with two underscores.
Okay, understand. Thank you.
Yeah. And even you can go ahead and use it. Nobody's going to stop you from that. But of course, when somebody is reading your code, that won't make much sense, right? Because he knows Python, he'll say, oh, why is he using a Dundle method form? So that is the idea. Good question, though. But this is actually valid. Also going to say this. So some people use this convention, some people use, you just have to follow the same. I personally prefer this, but everybody has their own style. So of course, if you're using this, then this won't work, right? You have to change it here as well. You have to be same throughout. The call would also become like this. Whatever you want to use, you can use, whichever way. This is more like an unsaid rule. It's not a rule by Python, but it's more like an unsaid theory that every programmer in Python world follows. Okay, so that said, let's go ahead. I lost track what I was actually explaining. Does anybody remember? I was coming to return values. Yeah. So the return values from a function. Now let's say it's the same. So if you follow closely here, right? What am I doing? I'm calling the function with two variables and I'm printing the result right here. If there was a way to send this result back to here, well, there is a way, and that's why we use return statements, and they are really, really handy sometimes. You won't understand the value of it with this example, but you will see in the later examples. So now I have to call, okay, 2, 3, and what do you guys think? This will work? This will be an error? I know most of you know functions, so that's why I'm asking these questions.
Work.
It should work.
So you're saying it will print 5?
It won't print 5, but it will work.
Exactly, that is the right answer. It's syntactically it's correct, but we're not printing anything, right? So it will be nothing. What is display name? Oh yeah, we did not change this back. So this was an error statement, right? Actually, you know what? Let me put it this way. You already saw the error, and let's put this into comment, and let's run it again. So like Najam said, no output, no error. Why? Because now you're not printing. Earlier you were printing the result right here. But now I change it with return statement. So what does return do? So basically it now again, first thing, this will execute. It will come here. All this is happening, even though it is nothing showing here, it's not printing. Then result is stored with 5. And we are saying return result. So when you say return result, you basically come back here and we're not doing anything with it. So there are a couple ways, actually 2 ways. What you can do is, now you know result is being
Directly print, directly
exactly.
print, we can call
So
it.
what you can do is you can directly print it. If you directly print it, see, now you're getting the answer. Or what you can do is you can put it in another variable, like let's say output. So output is nothing but another variable. You can even use x equal to, it doesn't matter. Again, just keep some meaningful names. So now the result value is passed to output, and what you can do is you can print output. So now it should print 5 again. Okay. So this is a very important concept again, guys. It looks very simple because we're just taking a simple example that you can return values from functions, and that you can either store or you can directly print, or you can even use them as you wish. There you go. So it's up to you. It's your problem statement. You can even add a C to it, and you have to define C. You can basically do anything with this, like I said. So that is the importance of return statement. Is there anybody who did not understand this concept so far, or anything so far? All right, that's super good. So let's go ahead. Now there's a question for you guys. Let me first put this in block.
So,
Actually, no, this is fine. Yeah,
Ankit,
go ahead.
when we can use return? So return doesn't mean that it will not print, but it will return the result to the function. Though we have to explicitly call the print statement to print
Exactly.
the expected result.
That
But
is correct.
when do we have to use the return key in the
So
function?
that's up to you. So this was just to explain you, but there are times when you don't want to print the value, but you want to use, like I was showing you, right? You want to use, this is again very basic example, but you want to use the return value in a different manner. See, in this example, if I run this, you actually never see the output as 5, right? And remember, 5 was the return value. So basically, the idea is if you want to use the return value in a manner other than what the value is, you can do anything with that value, right? That
Got
is when you're, of course, going to use return value, right?
Got it. Got it. Thank you.
So now a question for you guys. And if you already know, then don't quickly answer. Wait for others. Do you think this will be printing an error, or what will it print? Anybody? Error, or what will be the output? Okay, all of you guys can answer now. If anybody knows.
Error?
Hello, Ankit.
Is error.
It should be concatenated and print.
So you mean it will be this? Hello, Ankit?
Yeah.
Okay. Tushar thinks
This will
it's
be
this.
not there, I think.
Somebody is saying error. Somebody is saying hello, Ankit. Anybody else think something else?
No, it should be hello, Ankit.
Okay. Let's see.
Error.
I think that is the right answer. No,
I
that's
think
right.
I think so also. Hello.
So again, now we are bringing back the old concepts that we have learned so far. We saw string
String
concatenation, right?
Yes.
Yeah, like Tushar said, exactly. So it won't be actually this, it would be this, to be precise.
I told that
No
they should
space.
not be there. Yeah.
Because now follow this, guys. What are we passing to x and y? X is taking hello and y is taking Ankit. And what are we doing? X plus 5. Remember when you do plus operator on strings, we learned in the strings class, you're going to concatenate both the strings. That's all you're going to do. And what after that is normal logic, right? We're returning hello Ankit here and we're putting it in output, and that's how we're printing it. Simple as that. So this is sometimes asked in interview as well, very basic interview question, but I'm glad you guys could answer it. Anybody who did not understand this part? So in other words, what it also means, again, like I started in the beginning of the class today, that Python is basically behaving dynamically. First we saw integer, then we saw float. We did not change anything here, right? X and Y are still the same, even in this example. So we saw integer, then we saw float, and finally we saw string as well. So what it means is that Python is dynamically typed. What it means really is that it is actually checking the type of the parameters only at the runtime. And that's how we are able to give any parameter values to X and Y, integer, float, string, even you can use lists and whatnot. Just that, make sure whatever you're passing, it will follow the rule of that type of parameter. So when you pass 2 and 3, it followed the arithmetic operator. When you forwarded a string, it followed the concatenation operator. Similarly, if you forward list or tuples, it will follow the same rule. So that's how it is, guys. It is no logic or no special thing here. All right, and of course, you might want to change this to add 2 strings or whatever you want, because this, even though it works, it doesn't make good sense, right? But again, that was just to confuse you guys.
Based on the input what we are providing, that in backend, it will change the logic.
Exactly. Well, it is not changing the logic, to be honest. It is just applying the rules per that type. So the rule for addition operator for strings is, we saw in the string class, that it concatenates. The rule for arithmetic operator for integers is that it adds the 2 numbers. So it is applying that rule based on the type of parameter you're passing. So whatever the rule for list is, it's gonna do that. Does anybody remember what is the rule for list? If you add 2 lists,
We should also concatenate like.
exactly.
Yes.
You guys are forgetting the basic concepts, huh? So, again, like I said, the rules of whatever type of params you're forwarding will be followed. You can do X multiply by Y also, whatever you want to do. That is nothing to do with it. All right. So now we've discussed return values, and I think we pretty much discussed the basics about function. So let me go ahead and write. I'm hoping it's not getting too much so far. I know it's a tough concept for some. So I mentioned something about first class objects, right, in the beginning of the session today. Let's see what that is, or what do I mean by that. So first of all, what are the rules when we say first class objects? Like we saw, everything in Python is functions. So basically what we are saying is that, I'm going to put it into comment later, that assigning, so the rules for this, okay, even before the rules, let me give you one more example. I'll put the rules back here, but I'll explain you first with an example. So my result equal to multiply, let's say I'm going to use multiply now because Sriram wanted to use multiply, okay? So this is my function call, right? And I'm going to define the function now. So this is how I work, guys, but up to you, whatever you want to do. Sorry, not 5,8, x, y. Bear with me for a minute. And return, okay, I won't complicate stuff. Result equal to x into y, return result. And then I'm taking the result into res and forget even about what am I doing. So concentrate on this line. We've already seen this line, right? In the past with this addition. So I should get 40. You understand this piece of code very well, but here is the answer of what you mean by first class objects right here. So what is this line actually doing, or what is this line basically meaning? What it means is that you're doing nothing but object mapping. Again, it's a oops concept, but you can follow along what I'm trying to explain. What you're doing is, this is nothing but a function, right? So this is a function call. And what you're doing, you are mapping the result of one type of object, which happens to be function here, into another type of object, which is what? Integer in this case. Did you guys understand this? What is happening here? So first step, what happens? Multiply 5 by 8. Sorry, multiply 5 comma 8 gets assigned to 40 or changed with 40. You can say swapped with 40. And then in the next line, you are basically assigning that 40 into result. Are you guys able to follow what I'm saying? So first thing, this will execute, this will go here. What will happen? Return result will return 40 here. So this whole line, this is internal, this is not shown to us. This whole line will be converted as 40 or replaced as 40, and then result equal to 40 is your normal thing. But essentially what is happening is we are trying to map two different kind of objects. Why? Because when this call was made, result didn't even knew what kind of object it will be holding. Like in this example, it's holding integer, but what if I gave float values here, then it will hold float. So the object mapping that happens at the runtime or dynamically is nothing but what it means by first class objects. And that's why we are saying functions are the first class objects, because they can be easily mapped to another class of object. Here we are mapping a function to which is a type of a class function to another object which is a type of integer. That is what is meant by first class objects. And what are the rules for that? Is the first rule is we can assign functions to variables. Didn't we just see this here? This is a function, we are assigning it to a variable. So that is the very first rule when you say functions, or what do you mean by first class objects. Then there is a second rule called assigning functions to another functions. We will see this pretty soon. Don't get confused yet. Then the third one is function can be passed as a parameter to function. We'll see this also going forward. Let me put this in comments. So remember guys, these are the three rules of first class objects. If either of the rule is followed, that means you have proven that whatever object you're using is basically a first class object. The example in this case is a function being proven as a first class object because the first rule applies here, which is assigning a function to a variable. Or in other words, we are trying to do an object mapping. A lot of this is related to OOPS concept, but just whatever I'm trying to explain doesn't really need OOPS so far. So this is what is meant by first class objects. The reason I'm explaining it here is because sometimes in some companies, they ask you to explain what are first class objects and how are functions defined as first class objects. So you can take this example or any, even the sum example would work here. I just chose multiply because Sriram was giving that idea, right? So the point is you can have a function assigned to a variable or the result of a function assigned to a variable. That is what is meant by functions as the first class objects. We'll see the other two maybe later in other classes. So anybody who did not understand that concept? All right, perfect. So like I was telling you about the naming convention. Yeah,
So Ankit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Ankit.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think if you see this object mapping, so when the result is x into y, result return result. So result will be stored in the here. So when we are initializing that multiply 5 comma 8 into result res actually. So
Sorry,
it is printing the result. So what is the use of printing there x into y in the top? I think result into x into y. Using okay. Only we are using
in the middle.
Giving the values in the I think print result.
I didn't get you. Sorry, what is the question again, Ravi?
Okay.
Lost you.
So we are giving the values here. Okay. Result is equal to. So what is the use of result? No result. What is the meaning? Actually, what is the meaning of result there? Return result in the above statement. No need to give that one. Right? What is the result in return statement?
If I don't return result,
why we need the return statement here?
Yeah, because we saw.
Here we are using the top, bottom thing.
No. But how is this getting populated? Unless we do return, this won't be returned, right? let me go ahead and put this in comment. Do you think this code will work? It's printing none. Because now if you're not returning the result, you're just storing it in here, in this result, but you're not returning it. So this result equal to is getting nothing. Because you're not returning anything back from the function. Remember when we just talked about the return concept? See here, we take the return and output and then we print it. That's how hello Ankit was getting printed, right? So of course, what you can do is, if you're talking about this, instead of return result, you can do this, print result. This will work perfectly fine, of course. But I'm just trying to explain you with this example that you are actually, if you want to return something, then what you're doing, you are able to do it. And that's what object mapping is, or that's what assigning function to variable means. Did you get the answer? Why do we need return result? Or still are you confused?
I think Ankit, a lot of
Because
times
the result is
we
One
use
I
second.
mean I'm
Yeah, Ravi, go ahead. It's okay. You can ask.
no return result, right? So it's res multiply y into x. So that is return result. Return result, right? That is. So how we are returning that?
I
It's
think I'm
coming
getting
there.
confused with the
Return
name.
result and res.
Okay, now,
Okay.
now let's talk about this. Forget the res.
No
You're
result.
getting
Okay.
confused.
Now return result.
Yeah. So what is result? Result is nothing but 5 into 8, which is 40, right? So this statement is going to give us 40. And what is this statement going to give us?
Yeah.
This
Okay. Okay.
statement is going to give us this 40 back here in output. That's what I was explaining. So output equal to this first, this will get executed and this will be replaced with 40. So the next line, that's why I said output equal to 40 is, of course, this is happening in one line only, but I'm trying to explain this, how this happens. So when you do this, something like this, right? So first thing is multiply 5 comma, it goes here. So x becomes 5, y becomes 8. Then the next line, it goes here. Then the next line is result is equal to x into y, which is 5 into 8, which is 40, right? And then return result means you're returning this value here, or basically instead of this, which is 40. And what are we doing in this line? Output equal to whatever the value is. So that is just something like x equal to 5. Did you get it now, or you still confused? So this line is actually nothing but, if I write, this is same as x equal to 40. Nothing different. The way I'm getting 40 is I'm getting it from this. And output is just another name for x. You can also use x here. It doesn't matter. Then use x. Same thing. So this line is nothing but x equal to 40. This is what it means. But how are you getting this 40? That is the whole idea. So the 40 is getting returned using result variable. The result stores 40 here. If you were to print, result is, oh, my bad. Okay, I think it won't work with this. So result is 40, see? So the value of result is already 40 here, but this guy doesn't know. Does it have a variable called result here? And we'll talk about local and global later, but just for now, no, right? So how will x equal to 40? How will it get x equal to 40? Only because you're able to return the value of result, which is 40. And again, this, like I said, this line gets replaced with just 40 because of this return statement. The moment you do this, this 40 will not happen because x is not able to get anything. You're not returning anything. See, your result is still 40, which is correct here, but your x is not 40. It is none, or basically 0. We'll talk why is it none, but that's a later concept. So for now, just think it is 0. Because your x equal to 40 did not happen because you did not return anything. The moment you return, x also becomes 40. See? Does it make sense now? Ravi, do you understand?
Yes, Ankit.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, Ankit. Hello.
Yeah, perfect. All right, sounds good. So let me put this also in comment. We don't need this here. But now you understood the rest part also, the object mapping. So what was I initially had? I had this. Output is going to multiply 5,8. Print output. There you go. Yes, Sanjam, you had a question too?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that a lot of times what happens is, from my own experience, we think print and return are the same thing, but print only prints the value to the console, so you can't actually do any operation on it.
Yes, that is a very valid statement. And that's why you could actually do. So, what Najam is saying, guys, it's an important statement that he's making. You can actually do the same thing. It will give you the same output of 40. Look at it, 40 will be printed twice. Come on, it's too slow. See, it's the same thing. Earlier I was printing using output, now I'm not printing without anything. So what Najam is saying that if you just use directly print statement, of course it will do the same thing. But the point he's trying to make is we won't be able to use this 40 anywhere down because we have not stored it in a variable. That is the reason why we are trying to call using this. Remember, I said if I don't want to see 40 at all, is there any way for this 40 to be changed? No, like I can't do print into 2, right? That's a syntax error. But I can use this output any way I want. Into 2 is just a basic example. So that is the idea of returning a value and storing it in another variable. And this whole concept is called function as a first class object because you're trying to assign functions to variables, like right here. All right. I hope that was clear to everybody. Let's go ahead and do you guys want to continue or is it getting too much for you guys? I think we can just stop for today because it's a lot. So just a couple more points. So like I was telling you about the naming convention, actually we went a lot more today. But anyways, like I was telling you, there are different naming conventions. There's one more unsaid rule. It's not really a rule, but like a general practice. Not a rule, but general practice that your function should not have more than 30 lines of code in it. It can have, it's not like it's not a syntax error, not a syntax error, but it's recommended. So like here we have only 1 and 2 lines of code. So similarly, you should not go beyond 30 lines of code. If you do that, then they will start creating issues during your code review. So where is my intro? Let me put it here. All right. So I'm going to stop here, guys, and we'll take it from here tomorrow. Functions is not an easy concept. Some people might understand it very well. So you might be thinking that others are able to answer, but that's okay. People who have no experience before, it is not an easy concept to grasp. So ask the same question again and again, doesn't matter to me. And if you already know, that's great. So tomorrow what we're going to see is how are the function parameters done and what are the different types of parameters. So just to give you an idea, there are 4 types of parameters in Python, and they are called positional arguments or parameters, or they're even sometimes called as required. And then there are default arguments, which we saw an example. And then there's variable length and there's keyword arguments. So of course, we won't be able to finish all of them tomorrow. So be prepared. Even tomorrow is going to be a little heavy class, but it will be, I think we should be able to cover a couple of those arguments, not all. So we'll go slow by slow again, because functions is very, very, very important. It's the building block of anything. If you understand functions, right, you actually don't even need object-oriented programming to write your code. Functions is all that you need in a real world to write a code. Interview is different and writing a real code is different, right? So when you write a real code, all you need to know is functions, and so far whatever we have learned. So we'll talk about it tomorrow in the different types of functions class, how it is done. All right, guys. Any question before we close?
Okay, just one question means as you were saying that we need to write the functions of 30 lines. So if there is big code, then we need to split into smaller chunks like that.
Correct, correct. So it is generally suggested that if you're writing a function that big that needs 30 lines, that means you're missing the whole idea of the function somewhere. So what you can do is you can break it into multiple functions so that you can use the same functionality again and again. So if you're writing a function which is doing so much in one block, why not break it and do it in a couple blocks and call it from within the function only? We'll see all that also. But yeah, you're right. And like I said, if you have 31 lines or 32 lines, nobody's going to stop you, but they might just ask you, hey, can you condense it into 30 lines? Because that's a general recommendation, as they say, right? It is recommended, it's not a rule.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right, guys, I'll see you tomorrow. Actually, tomorrow is off, Wednesday, so we'll talk on Thursday. Try to understand this and play around with a lot more examples, not just multiply and addition. Try to do some more funky stuff. Try to add more parameters here, and let's say z and what happens, and when you give more than one value. The more and more you practice functions, the more and more you get better at it. And the more you get better at functions, that is what is going to help you in a real world. So almost every program can be written just using functions. Of course, it can be written using object-oriented programming concept as well, but you don't have to write it. If you're good with functions, you can do programming very well. All right, guys, I'll see you tomorrow. I mean, Thursday. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you, Ankit.
Thank you. Bye.